No face pay out much wampum to get 'em cut every day. Oh, it probably won't take long till the strength is exhausted. Says you. Well, I've got half a story. Cheerio. I sighed. If only Miss Frances could control it. A fortune. I walked home trying to figure out what I was going to do tomorrow. I thought I was prepared for anything after the shocks of the day before. I know I was prepared for nothing at all, to find the grass as I'd left it, or even reverted to its original decay. Indeed, I was not too sure that my memory was completely accurate, that the thing had happened so fantastically. But the devil grass had outdone itself and made my anticipations foolish. It waved a green crest higher than the crowd, a crowd 3 times the size of yesterday's and increasing rapidly. All the scars inflicted on it, the indignities of scythe and mower, were covered by a new and even more prodigious stand, which made all its former growth appear puny. Bold and insolent, it had repaired the hacked-out areas and risen to such a height that, except for a narrow strip at the top, all the windows of the Dinkman house were smothered. Of the garage, only the roof, islanded and bewildered, was visible, apparently resting on a solid foundation of devil grass. It sprawled kittenishly, its deceptive softness faintly suggesting fur, at once playful and destructive. My optimism of the night before was dashed. This voracious growth wasn't going to dwindle away of itself. It would have to be killed, rooted out. Now, the Dinkman lawn wasn't continuous with its neighbors, but until now had been set off by chest-high hedges. The day before, these had contained and defined the growth, but overwhelming them in the night, the grass had swept across and invaded the neat, civilized plots behind, blurring sharply cut edges, curiously investigating flower beds, barbarously strangling shapely bushes. But these weren't the ravages which upset me. It was reasonable, if not entirely comfortable, to see shrubbery plants and blossoms swallowed up. Work of men's hands they may be, but they bear the imprimatur of nature. The cement sidewalk, however, was pure artifice, stamped with the trademark of man. Indignity and defeat were symbolized by its overrunning. It was an arrogant defiance, an outrageous challenge offered to every man happening by. But the grass was not satisfied with this irreverence. It was already making demands on curbing and gutter. Junior, you've got a story now. W.R. fired 3 copy boys and a proofreader, he was so mad at himself. Here. Jackson Goots made a pass in the air, simulated astonishment at the $20 bill which appeared miraculously between his fingers, and put it in my hand. "Thank you," I replied coolly. "Just what is this for?" "Faith, me boy, such innocence I've never seen since I left the old sod. 'Tis but a little token of esteem from himself to repay you for the trouble of leading me to your scientist, your Frankenstein, your Burbank. Lead on, my boy, and make it snappy, brother," he added, "because I've got to be back here for the rescue." "Rescue?" "Yeah, people in the house." He consulted a scrap of paper. "Pinkman. Dinkman. Dinkman. Yeah, thanks. No idea how sensitive people are when you get their names wrong. Dinkman's phoned the fire department. Can't get out. Rescue any minute. Got to cover that. Imperative. Trapped in home by freak lawn. And nail down your scientist at the same time." I was very anxious myself to see what would happen here, so I suggested, since I could take him to the discoverer of the metamorphizer any time, that we better stay and get the Dinkman story first. With over-enthusiastic praise of my acuteness, he agreed, and began practicing his sleight-of-hand tricks to the great pleasure of some children, the same ones, I suspect, who had plagued me when I was spraying the lawn. His performance was terminated by the rapidly approaching fire siren. The crowd seemed of several minds about the purpose of the red truck squealing around the corner to a stop. Some, like Goots, had heard the Dinkmans were indeed trapped in the house. Others declared the firemen had come to cut away the grass once and for all. Still others held the loud opinion that the swift growth had generated a spontaneous combustion. But having made their abrupt face in the ground halt, The truck, or rather the firemen on it, anticlimactically did nothing at all. Helmeted and accoutred, ready for instant action, they relaxed contentedly against the engine, oblivious of grass, bystanders, or presumable emergency. Goot strolled over to inquire the cause of their indolence. "Waiting for the chief," he was informed. Thereupon he borrowed a helmet, possibly on the strength of his press card, and proceeded to pull from it such a variety of objects that he received the final accolade from several of his audience when they told him admiringly he ought to be on the stage. The bystanders were not seduced by this entertainment into approval of the firemen's idleness, and inquired sarcastically why they had left their cots behind, or if they thought they were still on WPA. The men remained impervious, until the chief jumped out of his red roadster and surveyed the scene Napoleonically. "Thought somebody was pulling a rib," he explained to no one in particular. "All right, boys, there's folks in that house. Let's get 'em out." Carrying a ladder, the men plunged toward the house. Their boots trod the sprawling runners heavily, spurning and crushing them carelessly. The grass responded by flowing back like water, sloshing over ankles and lapping at calves, thoroughly entangling and impeding progress. Panting and struggling, the firemen penetrated only a short way into the mass before they were slowed almost to a standstill. From the sidelines, it seemed as though they were wrestling with an invisible octopus. Feet were lifted high, but never free of the twining vegetation. The ladder was pulled angrily forward, but the clutch of the grass upon it became firmer with every tug. At length they were halted, although their efforts still gave an appearance of advance. Thrashing and wrenching, they urged themselves and the now burdensome ladder against the invincible wall. The only result was to give the illusion they were burying themselves in the clutching tentacles. Exertions dwindled. The struggle grew less intense. Then they retreated, fighting their way out of the enveloping mass in a panic of desperation, abandoning the ladder. The chief surveyed them with less than approbation. "Cut your way in," he ordered. "You guys think those axes are only to bust up furniture with?" Obediently, wedges of bright steel flashed against the green wall. "Impatiently I await the rescue of fair Dinkmans from this enchanted keep," murmured Goots, vainly trying to balance his pipe on the back of his hand. It looked as though he would have to contain his impatience for some time. The firemen slashed unenthusiastically at the grass, which gave way only grudgingly and by inches. Half an hour later, they triumphantly dragged out the abandoned ladder. "Stuff's like rubber, bounds back instead of cutting." "Yeah, and in the meantime, those people been telephoning again. Want to know what the delay is, want to know what they pay taxes for, threaten to sue the city." "Let 'em sue. Long as they're in there, they can't collect. Funny as a flat tire. Get going, Goldbrick." End of chapter 1, part F.